Most economic experts warn us that in 2023 we are likely to face a severe recession. This will cause stock markets such as the S&P 500, Nasdaq, and all others to plunge sharply, as has already started to happen. Interestingly, in terms of jobs, there is more demand and less unemployment. This may be because many jobs were lost during the COVID-19 pandemic when everything was closed. People could not leave their homes, and many jobs could not be done by telecommuting, for example, restaurants, factories, mines, etc. So what is happening to the middle class? The higher the inflation, the more all products and services go up in price, from a simple loaf of bread to a car. Central banks then start trying to contain inflation, but in what way? For example, central banks in several countries have no choice but to raise interest rates to try to contain high inflation. Why? Central banks raise interest rates to contain inflation because inflation is a generalized and persistent increase in the prices of goods and services. When interest rates rise, borrowing becomes more expensive, which discourages people from spending and businesses from investing. This tends to reduce demand and, consequently, prices. In addition, raising interest rates can also increase the value of money and decrease the money supply, which can also help curb inflation. In recent years, for example, the US Federal Bank has created money out of thin air, in large quantities, to keep its economy going speculatively since the dollar is not backed by anything tangible, only by the US economic level. In these times of economic crisis, governments have to try to get money out of the economy, because, for example, in the US case, the more dollars they print, without any tangible backing, the less the dollar is worth. The less the dollar is worth, the poorer the people who earn in dollars, because among other things, inflation increases, everything becomes more expensive, but your salary remains the same, so you are poorer. In the stock markets it happens that when this kind of situation occurs, uncontrolled inflation, people are more afraid to invest because it can crash the economy. In everyday life, people buy less and less because everything is much more expensive because of inflation. They borrow less because the interest rates on a loan to buy a house are very high. The middle class is disappearing in many countries. The middle class becomes lower middle class or poor in more and more situations, while those who have more, buy everything on sale, invest because stocks because they are cheap because of the economic crisis, buy houses at bargain prices. The richest wait for the economy to return to normal, buy cheap and then sell expensive, making a lot of money. But for someone middle class who barely has money to pay the bills, how can they save, or invest? They just can't. And from year to year they get poorer due to inflation, economic crises, etc. Since most of the time wage increases do not increase in line with inflation, the middle class is disappearing. Normal inflation in a country should be between 2% and 3%, but right now we have countries with inflation of 7%, 8%, 10%, and more. There are several types of inflation, such as creeping or moderate inflation, 3%, runaway inflation, over 3%, uncontrolled inflation, plus 10%, and finally hyperinflation, plus 50%. Normally, in developed countries, for example, it is very difficult to have hyperinflation. On the other hand, deflation can occur on rare occasions. This is because when the prices of any type of goods decrease too much and negative inflation occurs, we may think that this is a good thing, but it is not. Deflation is the general decline in the prices of goods and services. This occurs when the supply of money and credit is insufficient to meet economic demand, or when the economy is in recession. Deflation can be detrimental to the economy as it can lead to increased unemployment and financial difficulties for businesses and individuals. The ideal is to have 2% to 3% inflation so that the economy will function in an orderly fashion. The middle class, as many economists say, is the backbone of the economy. That is, it sustains the economy in an organized way, but it is slowly disappearing. There are more and more two social classes, the rich and the poor.